Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mr. Fincham's Fireside Follow-Alongs. Today we are going to be continuing on with our book, New Beginnings. The Virginia Colony, 1609 to 1699. And Jamestown, excuse me. So where we left off on page 107. Remember, this is in your text collection. The first few months were rough. Remember, the colonists land, right? And they find that the soil is soaked. Okay, it's mushy. They can't grow crops in it. Not a good thing to start off with. Also, the salt water got into their drinking water. Remember, so they can't drink it. So they don't have fresh water. They don't have food. And the mosquitoes are spreading malaria, and luckily, some of the Native Americans are helping them because they're so weak from not eating and not drinking anything that they can't hunt and they can't fish. Big problems for the settlers. So that's where we left off. And they also are building a log wall around their fort, right? So before we jump into the new pages today, first let's take a quick look at the ELA questions and tasks, the reading and writing task. Think about the stories you may have heard about Pocahontas. There is even a Disney movie about her. Do the stories match what you read today? What is the same? What is different? If you do not know who she was, do you agree with her choice to save John Smith? So remember, John Smith was mentioned earlier in this book. He is one of the settlers. Keep in mind that when Disney or other movie companies, for that matter, when they make movies about things that really happened, when they make movies about them, they're not always accurate. Sometimes they change certain details, or they turn up the drama, right? Turn up the scariness, or they turn up things that are interesting to make the story better. So when you're watching a movie, it's not always going to be exactly the same. So for those of you who have seen the Disney movie Pocahontas, it is a good movie. It has great music. I enjoyed watching it. If you haven't seen it, try to get a chance to watch it this summer. It's really good. So the question again is, do the stories that we read in this book, do they match the movies? What was the same? What was different? And do you agree with her choice to save John Smith? Okay, yes or no, and then tell me why. And here's the text to self-connection. Name all of the text features you have found in the text so far. List as many as you can. How do the text features reveal the main ideas and key details in the passage? And the extension. Why did people leave England to come to America? So why they do it in the first place? Remember, they went across a dangerous and large sea, and they landed on a place with unexplored and dangerous wilderness. They run into all these problems. They put themselves in harm's way, big time. Why'd they do it? Why did they leave England? We are going to start on page 108. A leader saves the colony. Here's an image of Captain John Smith. All through that first summer, people died. By September, more than half the settlers were dead. The leaders argued amongst themselves. No one could decide what to do. Would Jamestown suffer the same fate as the lost colony? The settlers needed a leader, or they would all die. Remember, the lost colony was Roanoke, the colony that kind of disappeared, right? At last, one man took charge. His name was Captain John Smith. Smith was 27 years old when he arrived in Jamestown. As a soldier, he already had lived through enough adventures for a man twice his age. He knew how to survive in the wilderness. He knew that the settlers had to work and farm, not search for gold. Last paragraph. Smith gave orders for each man to work on building the fort and gathering food. When the gentlemen reminded Smith of their rank, Smith had a simple answer. He who will not work will not eat. The gentleman went to work. Smith helped the settler survive. So, remember, what do they mean when they're reminding Smith of their rank? They're saying, look, we're gentlemen. We don't chop wood. We don't go into the soil and plant things. We don't go fishing. We don't hunt. That's beneath us. We are the higher ups, right? We are above all of those things. We don't need to get our hands dirty. And John Smith's answer was simply, oh, really? Because if you're not going to work for it, you're not going to get any of the food. What was their response? They went to work, which is probably what they should have been doing the entire time. But at least someone finally takes control, right? So here's a little drawing, a little portrait of the village that they lived in. Page 109. Voices from America. Here's a little picture. Here is John Smith. He is tied up and in front of, looks like a Native American elder or somebody who's in charge. Princess Pocahontas risked the beating of her own brains, or the beating out of her own brains to save mine. Not only that, but she so won over her father that I was safely conducted to Jamestown. So notice her hands here together clasped. She is begging her father. Pocahontas pleading with her father to save John Smith's life. Remember, the Native Americans saw them as invaders. They come to our land. They chop down our trees. They build forts on our land. A lot of times they're not friendly to us. Why should we be friendly with them? John Smith and Pocahontas. In December 1607, Smith almost died when the Indians captured him. They took him to the chief. Smith later wrote a book about his experiences. When the warriors picked up their clubs and rocks, he was certain he was about to die. According to Smith, just before they came, Pocahontas, Powhatan's 13-year-old daughter, rushed out. She laid her head across Smith's body. In Smith's account, the chief was moved by his daughter's actions. Instead of killing him, they adopted Smith into the tribe. He returned to Jamestown with not only his life, he had also won the friendship of the chief. Pocahontas did more to save John Smith's life. Over the next few years, she helped save the colony. She brought food to the colonists. She also helped the newcomers trade for goods with her people. She warned the settlers about the raids the Powhatan planned against them. They were able to prepare themselves for battle because of her early warnings. So, Pocahontas saving the life of John Smith and probably many others, right? Whether they deserved it or not, it kind of depends on who you ask or what your own personal opinion is. But man, Pocahontas, that is one brave woman. Page 110, A Deadly Time. The Powhatan released Smith in January 1608. When he returned to Jamestown, he found a group of cold and hungry settlers. Smith was a great leader, but the colonies still faced many challenges. Remarkably, on the same day he returned, a ship from England sailed up the river. It carried about 100 new settlers, along with food and supplies. The colony's bad luck continued, however. A few days later, a fire broke out in the village, destroying most of it. So notice the picture here. Whoops. Soon after new settlers arrived, a fire burned houses inside of the walls of the fort. While the settlers rebuilt the village, Smith went back to Powhatan to trade for food. The Native Americans and the settlers also exchanged hostages as a way of keeping the peace. Still, the weakened settlers continued to die. By spring, there were only 38 left. Most had died from starvation or illness. So, remember, they have the original settlers, right? Then they get a ship for 100 more. By that spring, only 38 were left. That tells you how dire their circumstances were, right? How dangerous it was to live here. Because if you don't farm, if you don't hunt, if you don't fish, if you're only out searching for gold or money, how can you survive? Meet Tom Savage. Tom Savage was a 13-year-old orphan in England. In 1608, he talked his way onto Captain Newport's ship that was sailing for Jamestown. The captain liked the boy. He took him on as an indentured servant. That meant Tom would have to work for Newport for 7 years to pay for his passage to America. In Jamestown, Tom expected to work as a field hand for Newport. Then, Captain Newport and John Smith discovered that Native American tribes sometimes traded children. So, the colonists exchanged Tom for an Indian boy named Namatak. Tom lived with the Powhatan for 3 years. He learned their language and their customs. Tom became a spy for the colonists. He told them when the Powhatan planned attacks. As a reward, Newport freed Tom from his indenture. Indenture just means that you owe them, right? So, trading children. I don't know what the colonists got out of it. I know that they received a boy, but what good is it to trade children? I don't know. I think it sounds like it's really wrong. But I still, it's unclear to me about what their motives were, why they would do that. Let's go to page 111. Trouble ahead. In the fall of 1608, another ship arrived with more settlers, including the first 2 women. Bad luck continued. Rats had eaten most of the ship's supplies for the settlers. Smith organized fishing and hunting parties. He made sure everyone worked hard to get food. As a result, very few settlers died that winter. So notice that the ships keep coming, and there's more people arriving. Hundreds of people are arriving on these ships. This is America as we know it, expanding. In 1609, John Smith was badly hurt. By accident, his bag carrying his gunpowder exploded. He sailed back to England to get treatment for his injuries. Before leaving Jamestown, Smith looked over the storehouses. He was pleased to see that the colony had enough food to get through the winter. The future of Jamestown looked brighter. There were now about 500 colonists. Among the new colonists was a woman named Annie Burris. She married settler John Layden. It was the first wedding in Jamestown. Smith planned to return to Jamestown. Although he returned to America, he never made it back to Jamestown. However, he wrote a book that told of life there. His book inspired many people to come to North America. Smith thought he had left a colony that would have no trouble surviving. And here's a picture of more women arriving in Jamestown. Let's go to 112. Here's another drawing of the settlers. The starving time. Colonists walking to church in the snow. When John Smith left Jamestown, there were 500 settlers. By the spring of 1610, only 60 were still alive. What could have happened in such a short time? How did the settlers die? The Powhatan had become more and more angry with the settlers for taking their land. With Smith gone, they decided to try and wipe out the colony. They would starve the colonists. They killed off the wild game around Jamestown that the colonists hunted for meat. Then they surrounded the village. The colonists could not leave to hunt or fish. Quickly, they went through their storehouse of food. Then they ate their cattle and goats. Next, they ate their dogs, and finally, rats and mice. The colonists starved and died through that long, terrible winter. By spring, the few who were left were ready to leave the colony. Jamestown seemed to be finished at last. The colonists called the winter of 1609 to 1610 the starving time. So, horrendous, horrible conditions that they're forced to live in. The Native Americans not being so friendly anymore, right? They surrounded the village and would not allow people to leave it to get food. Why? Because they think, and probably rightly so, that the colonists are kind of just invading their land. There are just ships and ships coming and dropping people off in their backyard, you know? Not saying it's right, but that's the reason. Page 113. A New Beginning. In the late spring of 1610, a single ship sailed into Jamestown harbor. The passengers and crew were shocked by what they found. The few remaining settlers were eager to leave. They packed up what little of value they had and climbed aboard the ship, ready to return to England. Was this finally the end of Jamestown? As the ship began to sail down the James River, 3 more English ships appeared. They were bringing more colonists, some soldiers, and food and supplies to the colony. The new governor, Lord Thomas Delaware, for whom the state of Delaware is named, was aboard. He ordered the fleeing colonists to turn around and go back to Jamestown. Delaware took charge of the colony. He set out to change the way the colony was run. He put the new settlers to work immediately. The colony now tried harder to get along with the Powhatan. For several years, the two groups were able to live together in peace. Jamestown would survive. But how would the settlers earn money? So here he is, Lord Delaware. So now they realize, look, if we want any chance of survival, we have to get along with the Native Americans. We can't just do whatever we want. We are not, this is not our land. We're visitors here, right? So if we want to survive, we have to get along with them. We have to find a way to make it work. And it looks like they did. But we are going to stop there for today. So before I sign off, I'm going to reread the questions one more time for the ELA questions and tasks. The reading and writing question. Think about the stories you may have heard about Pocahontas. There is even a Disney movie about her. Do the stories match what we read today? What was the same? What was different? If you do not know who she was, do you agree with her choice to save John Smith? In the text to self-connection. Name all of the text features you have found in the text so far. List as many as you can. How do the text features reveal the main ideas and key details in the passage? And the extension. Why did people leave England and come to America? So that is it for me today, you guys. I will see you all next time. I hope you enjoyed the story. I know it was a little dark, but it's how we got to where we are today. It's kind of how America as we know it was born. So it's important that we learn about. Thank you guys for following along with me. As always, leave comments in the section below. Reach out to me on Seesaw. Shoot me an email. I'll be interested to see what your guys' thoughts are of the story. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.